With the MCU getting ready to put in its final gem and next year's Infinity War, I wanted to go back to where it all started. Jim's story, these 6 issues, they were classics when I started reading. And it's Thursday, you know what that means? It's time for us to have another Throwback Thursday. And we're gonna go back in time, throw up that celebration, because Heart of the Stories we tell, and me, Rob the host, is going to take us back to a quick nostalgic look and see how a story was that might be a little bit on the older side. So celebrate your week almost being over as we look at the Infinity Gauntlet. And of course, as always, we start with. So once again, it's stop. Spoiler time. Most Throwback Thursdays, we do that with a grain of salt. This time I mean it, because in the MCU, the movies, we're going to get some version of this. So anything I say in here could be a spoiler for that movie. Because remember, Thanos said, "Guess I gotta do it myself," which is a reference to a series called Thanos Quest that predates this story, but at the same time, could also reference the Gauntlet itself. Now, I'd be remiss without saying that I actually came into this during the aftermath of it. Like I said, by the time I was reading, Infinity Crusade was the one that was on the shelves. So I just recently, like within the last 2 years, picked up the trade paperback of this and Infinite Gauntlet Aftermath. Both are great purchases, and you should totally get them if you're into comic books. But for now, let's talk about exactly what this story is. Compared to a lot of the modern crossovers, this thing was measly. 6 issues told over a couple of months, with a little bit of a lead-in and a little bit of a crossover, but for the most part a self-contained story. Jim Starlin created an entire infinity cosmos, an entire concept, and he did it based around 6 gems that no one had ever heard of before. The Infinity Stones. Each one a small fragment of a cosmic being, so powerful that even when broken into 6, each one component was all but unstoppably powerful. The ability to control all of time, space, minds, souls, power, and reality itself. I constantly have this thing in my head where I think the reality gem alone is probably as powerful as most people think of as a gauntlet. With the fully assembled gauntlet, there is almost nothing that can stand against you. We'll talk about what that almost is during Aftermath, if we ever get to it. But for now, let's talk about setting. This story takes place in the Marvel Universe, the comic book universe that we're all familiar with, Spider-Man and all of them. The story itself takes place in 1990-1991, although with the sliding timescale, I think it happened like 6 weeks ago in continuity of the comics. But at the same time, it really did affect everyone at the time. And we'll see that when they get into later Infinity events, like modern telling stuff, they also had these crossover into main titles. So what about characters? I could have an hour-long video just explaining who's in this story. Everyone's in this story. Well, everyone that doesn't die at the beginning. And to be honest, I'm going to just go over a couple of ones that I find the most interesting, starting with Doctor Doom, Doctor Strange, Silver Surfer, Adam Warlock. You know what? This is going to take forever, even just doing the quick ones. All the cosmic players. See Galactus? He's front and center, but that's the Celestials and a whole bunch of others. See that? That's Cyclops. He's one of the main representatives of the X-Men in this. There we see Nebula, fake Thor, Drax the Destroyer, Hulk. Yeah, Hulk gets his ass kicked in this, and that's pretty cool when you think about it. The Thor we see is actually Thunderstrike pretending to be Thor. That's a long story. Like I said, Doctor Strange, Silver Surfer, Adam Warlock, Nebula, who is a main player. Here's Wolverine getting totally decimated by Thanos. You know what? Just all of them. All of them are in this. So let's move on to the plot. The plot is a linear story told basically about what happens when the bad guy has ultimate power. By the way, it all starts with half the universe is dead, just gone. And with that, let's talk about whose point of view we're really following here. Less than a minute ago, I said it was all the characters, but you know what? The point of view is really this guy right here, Adam Warlock. teamed up with and against this guy, Thanos. In fact, the entire story, the entire concept can really be drummed down to which one of them is better, and it's from both points of view. Theme and symbolism, symbolism and themes. Man, if I had 6 hours to make this video, I could fill it just with the stuff that goes on between Adam being Space Jesus, between Thanos being his own worst enemy, between, you know what, the symbolic use of how the gems work, and the entire idea of why it's the gauntlet. But I'm going to try to narrow it down just to a few. And with that, I'm going to ask, what would you do if you were a god? If you could create anything? If you could kill half the universe with a snap of your fingers? Well, that's part of this. Thanos won. And then what? He wasn't any happier having won than he was having lost. And that's where our two main themes come from. The two that I want to discuss anyway. The ones I'd love your comments down below to discuss as well. The first is, Thanos did this all for love. Thanos loves Mistress Death. Thanos wants Mistress Death. First, he wasn't powerful enough, then he was too powerful, and both times she snubbed him. What would you do for the woman you loved? What would you do to try to get the attention? And for books that are, let's be honest, aimed at teenagers, the idea of showing off to try to impress the girl isn't too hard of a theme to put together. But the second is even more devastating when you think about it. What is your worst enemy? What if it's you? What if every failure you have is your own fear to succeed, throwing obstacles up? I'll tell you right now, as a writer, one of the biggest problems I face, and I can relate to Thanos, is when I sit there and go, oh, maybe I'm not good enough, maybe I shouldn't submit this story, maybe I shouldn't do that, and throw my own obstacles up. Now, of course, his is much more fanciful, but let me know down in the comments what you think of those two themes, because again, I could go on all day. But I think those two are ones that could be a huge discussion in and of themselves. And I'm going to throw in the symbolic nature of Thanos throwing a temper tantrum, about him building an entire palace to death, and exactly what that means in the cold harshness of space. And the thematic moment when Cap and him stare down. Those are great symbols of what this story means. Thanos actually not just has a gauntlet, but runs a gauntlet of all the celestial beings, the most powerful creatures on the multiverse. And I want to talk about how all that comes down to in the end, and why I say it's Adam Warlock and Thanos at the story. But first, let me throw this up here one more time, because I fear this could be a big spoiler for the movies. Even with no Adam Warlock, I expect that someone, and I'm going to just go out on a limb and say Vision is going to play this role. See, at the end of the day, it wasn't the gods that mattered, because Nebula got her hands on the gauntlet, but only after being manipulated by Warlock. Now, Warlock had plans within plans. He had an idea to steal the gauntlet, he had an idea to manipulate Nebula into doing stuff with the gauntlet, he had an idea to get the gauntlet himself. And at the end of the day, when they're all racing towards it, there's this big energy boom, and everyone wonders who has it, and then boom, from within the Soul Gem, Adam takes control of the gauntlet. Without Adam to play this role, the movie's going to have to play out very differently, but I'd like to remind you that Vision has the Mind Gem, and the same could happen with that in the end. Now, back to the comic and the main story. In the aftermath, Adam Warlock breaks the gauntlet up. Well, he's forced to by Living Tribunal. Remember when I said almost nothing can combat the gauntlet? There's one of those almosts. Living Tribunal. Remember, we got a reference to him in the Doctor Strange movie, too. And he creates the Infinite Watch. Gamora and Drax from Guardians are main players in this story. And it's another good one. But let's double back to the gauntlet itself. This story, written 27 years ago, isn't perfect by a long shot. It's got a lot of places that I think that modern storytellers would have kind of rounded some edges, and definitely would have made the story better. But you know what? The basis of it is amazing. The entire idea of the bad guy has infinite power, and the only thing that could stop him is his own insecurity is amazing. All in all, I'm giving this a solid gold and thinking it might be edging near platinum. 6 simple issues that you can still collect in trade paperback that I totally think is worth getting. And I hope that when the MCU gets around to it, that Infinity War is half as good as this. I'd be happy. And I hope they're going to knock it out of the park. But for now, let me know what you think. Have you read it? And if so, let me know what you think down in the comments. I also plan on doing a sequel to this, where we talk about Infinity War. Infinity War is the comic that came out next and is the one that the movie is actually named after, although I don't expect there to be a lot of doppelgangers in it. We'll talk about that another time. Next time we'll go back to Babylon 5. For now, I need you to like, share, and subscribe to my channel, especially if you like to see my Flashback Thursdays. And as we move forward, we're going to be using this, plus our normal weekly videos, to explore and look at the heart of all of the stories we tell. Thanks for watching.